Hi, I'm Leonard and today we are building a ride-on one. First thing to notice is that when building rails, there's two ways of mounting it. It can go like this and it's on the inside, and this is used for the smaller motor. It can also be placed on the outside, and then because you have more width you can place a larger motor. And for the purpose of this video we will be building one with the smaller motor, but the principle is basically the same. You just place the reaction plate on the other side and screw it in from the outside. So step one is always building the rails. We're using 4 of these countersunk screws. We will place them like this. Doesn't have to be that tight. These countersunk screws have a tendency to get stuck, so if you ever want to be able to remove it, it's very important that it's not too tight. Okay, so next thing is we will place the rail on the motor. And this means putting in the motor cable. Here is the hole for the on and off button, and the motor cable goes in that direction. So it goes through this hole, which is on the front, and you can just leave it hanging at first. First we will put the cable through, and then you can mount it on the frame like this. And for now it's enough. We can start feeding in the motor cable. It's a bit fiddly, but once it's in, it makes your job a lot easier than afterwards. Could wrap some tape around the wires so that it's not going everywhere. Once you get past the second bolt, basically it's fine. And since the rails are still very open, and this is why you do it at first, it's still accessible through the front hole. You can see that I'm kind of pushing in the wires, and once you have the last phase wire, then you're basically out of the woods. Last one. So now I just have the hall cables. Usually they tend to follow quite nicely. So here we go. All cables connected. Alright. Let's feed the cable in all the way. There we go. Now what you could do to make your life a bit easier, just to mount the nut. It will make it a bit sturdier, and we will tighten it later. So that's one side. And the other side will be done very similar. Just going on here? Yeah, that's good. Now this version has a small reaction plate, and that is due to that an extra reaction plate, I should say. It's not necessary in the new versions because this plate has been replaced by a stainless steel version, which gives it a little bit more weight but a bit more stability as well, and in the end it's what matters. So on your build it will have just the regular plate and a big nut, and it will go on and it will be nice. So now we have to adjust the plate a bit. And then we can add the nut. Oh. Just keep it, finger tight for now. We'll adjust it again later. Right, so now we are flipping it on its head. This is obviously the VESC side, this is the battery side. It doesn't really matter where you start. You could start, I like starting with the battery, but you could start with the VESC, doesn't really matter. I already have the battery attached, but it's also very nice to just start with the box, build your battery, and then mount it as you go. We're using these very small, very undeep, also countersunk screws. So be careful not to tighten them as much again. I recommend you sit down for you stand up for this. Sitting down makes it a bit harder. Alright, so notice how in a later stage we will be mounting these sliders, and you only have 2 holes. So we're using the back hole and the second hole from the front. So be careful not to screw those in already. So we're only using this one and that one. And again, don't over tighten them, but it is somewhat structural integrity, so don't keep them loose, but don't worry, they won't come loose. Right, so now front plates, basically the same thing. And because of the battery weight, it will keep upright. Make sure all the plugs are out. There we go. Alright, and as you noticed, we are using now the old electronics module. In the new version we have a more compact one, and I recommend first mounting the front bottom plate, and then you can mount the electronics unit. You can just put it like that and then put in the screws. You can do the VESC as well like that. It will make your life a bit easier with all the wires. For the sake of the video, we're now not doing that. So it's starting to look like a ride-on. So now the most important thing is not to forget the on and off button, because once you have the rail plugs in, these are the rail plugs, and they are used to mount these bumpers. And once you close off the front end like that, it's going to be hard to reach, and it's kind of fiddly, you know, with these wires. So I recommend doing it now. But you'll learn as you'll go, because if you forget, you can always, you know, take it back apart. And it has an O-ring, so it will self-seal. It's just a matter of feeding the wire through. I already have, you know, the tie rip in place, keeping everything sort of organized. There we go. You can't really see it, but it's a matter of making it grab a thread. It's a bit fiddly. I think this is the most fiddly job on here. Let's see if gravity can help us out. There we go. So maybe you can see it like this. You can just use your finger to. It doesn't also need to be tight because it's being kept in place by an O-ring. So I've adjusted it so the sign looks nice. I'm pressing it with both fingers, using my finger here to tighten the nut. And once it's sort of tight, the O-ring will keep it in place. But this is golden. Right, so the bumper has a small strip. It is a strip that can be mounted. I already have the LED strip in place right now, but it's good practice to have it not on there yet. Mount the bumpers, and then when everything is in place, you can, you know, get your LED strip in place, and it will be a bit easier. But for now, for the video, just leave it like that. So we're gonna flip it on his head again in order to not forget that there are 4 again of these small countersunk M4 screws. So we will be, you know, putting it in place here. And when you have the 4 bolts in place, it will keep everything in its place. Oh wait, I just remember I forgot. Because of course, before you do that, we need these rail plugs. So now there's 2 different ways of mounting them. Make sure that the bolt holes are on the outside. It's easy to swap it out like this, but then of course there's nothing to screw in. So make sure that you have the threaded holes on the outside. They are recessed about 1 millimeter, so you need to push them in a little bit. And you can, you know, adjust them a bit. I like putting in these Allen keys. So if the Allen keys go through, you know you're in the right spot. Like that, you know. And then we'll grab this long bolt, and it is intentionally, it's just a normal Allen key bolt. And that is done because it will protect the frame when it's rolling down a hill or something. Screwing up the nice array of bolts that Yuri made. Still, so basically once you know it's in front of the hole, it can go all the way through. Now the outside of the frame has a threaded hole. And that is done because you don't want to squeeze the frame. Of course, being plastic parts, you don't want to squeeze everything, then you won't get it out. You can distort the frame as well. So what it's basically doing is just going all the way through, and then when you mount the bumpers, it will grab the rail plugs and it will pull them outside, and it's fine. It's a really nice way to mount it. So it doesn't have to be tight at all. Once the bumper is mounted, it will just keep itself in place. Now I just have to do the same for the other side. Make sure we get the bolt holes right. I like pushing in the bottom part first. Again, just kind of mess with it a bit. If it's a bit too big, you can use, you could sand them down a little bit. It's a bit depending on your 3D printer, I guess. If it's, dialed in really well, you could have, so if you're ordering the 3D printed parts, they'll probably fit like a glove. And if you have a nicely dialed in printer, it will probably also fit like a glove. And if not, maybe use a sander, it will fit in the end. There we go, rail plugs mounted. Now we can mount the bumper. Again, easiest to just get these 4 bolt holes in from the bottom side. I like finishing up the bottom side completely before I flip it over. And then, you're sure you don't forget anything anymore. You can close the covers. And then basically you're done. Do need to put the inner fenders in, but cross that bridge when we get to it. Alright. Other side, same process. Oh, that one goes in really nice. Makes it viewing a lot nicer, So once you got it lined up really well, perfect. Because all these holes are machined. It's really important to have these rails machined because otherwise you're not going to be able to get all these bolt holes in line properly. This little trick you can put the Allen key in, just give it a little nudge. Perfect. That's one. I say that went in pretty well. Also good to mention that if you are trying to ride in rainy conditions a lot, I do not really recommend it, but you know, it might be a good precaution. So you can just mount all these first surfaces, just you know, get some silicone gasket and just you know, put a little bit between, and it will help a lot. And in the inside of the rails, they use holes. Everything is, all the wires go through in a hole, and there's these rubber plugs you can get. I'm not gonna pretend that that's gonna make it fully waterproof, so don't throw it in the ocean, but it will definitely help a lot. So second bumper. Right, so now let's take a look at these slide plates. They are a bit fiddly to mount. I recommend doing the top bolt first, because it is the hardest, and if that's the only one that's in there, it's going to be the easiest. There we go. So get it almost all the way in. Just leave a little bit of wiggle room. It's almost all the way in. Now let's get these slightly bigger ones. You know, these are a tiny fraction bigger, but that is because it is slightly higher due to the slide plate. And now get the one all the way in the back. And once these are both in, it's gonna be really easy. Also be careful not to over tighten these top ones, because it's possible that you break these front piece, and it doesn't have to be tight, it's gonna be fine. And once you got that one, get the other bolts in. Protect your nice new ride-on. Right, so this one, slightly bigger again, still M4. And if you do this in this order, you're gonna find the hole nice. This one you can do a bit tighter, but again, if it doesn't follow this curve perfect, leaves a bit of a gap and it compresses it, you're at risk of breaking it. So don't recommend that. Take your time, don't overdo it. You might make slightly thicker ones in the future, and then you'll be able to tighten it a bit more. But again, if you're not doing some crazy stuff, it's not gonna matter that much, because you're not gonna load it here. It's mostly gonna slide here on the bottom side, so it's fine. All that's left is the other side. Same process. Rinse and repeat. There we go. Wow, this one lines up perfect. Gotta love that feeling. Okay, that's starting to look like quite something. Alright, so now we have these inner fenders and they have these little lips and they help when you're going off curb to not hang up on this bit, because there's a little gap here and it will make that transition slightly smoother. So that part has to be on the bottom side so it can hook under the plate, and because it usually is quite tight, I like mounting these corners in first so you can kind of compress them in a little bit. Just work these suckers down. You can sheet like this. It also helps finding the holes because you can kind of slide it that way until it's, you know, completely flush. Feels right. I don't know, you can see more than I can. So just get it on the bottom, push it in all the way. Try to squeeze it that way, and then, you know, we're there. Let's see how it did. Oh, that looks nice. So the last of these small Allen bolts will go in here. Alright, that's it for the bottom side. Alright, a few things must be done. We need to tighten the axle nuts. I like, I mean, the order doesn't really matter. I don't usually use a special key for that. I'm just going for very tight. Oh, this is so hard sitting down. Do this standing up. This way you'll get to see it better. Just use, you know, the frame to support, get it on a flat surface, because this will also determine how straight the frame is. Get it really tight because you don't want this moving. Right, so now I'm just gonna mount this reaction plate real quick. It's not gonna be in the next version anymore. It was already tightened, but you know. Alright, it's starting to look like something. Few things. We want to cover this huge hole with these plates. Again, when you're using the big motor, these plates will be on the outside. And you can choose. I like the look of seeing the stainless steel reaction plate and then it has a small recess. I actually like that. If you don't, there's an STL file. You can print the cover plate. It will look very similar to this because it will be flush and also in black plastic. But we're doing the small version today, so it's just a matter of, you know, fiddling this in between and lining it up nicely. We'll get these big Allen bolts. And also make sure don't over tighten this, of course, even though it is engineered to, you know, be able to. It's you know, push loading it, so it can handle a bit. And it's a strong piece of plastic. You know, I print in nylon carbon because, you know, this part will be sliding on the ground a little bit. And there's a nice wear resistance on that side. So, you know, other side, same process. Just that here's also a cable. So you will need to fill in this. Actually, let me show you. This is the cable, the motor cable. Also have 3 wires going to the LED strip. And you know, you need to fill this in. Again, if you're not using the reaction plate we mounted earlier, it's gonna be a lot easier because lots of more room. It's not too bad. Okay, that's beginning to look pretty nice. So since this is just the mechanical part of the build, I'm just gonna, you know, mount these foot plates. We'll do a separate video on how to do wiring, but basically you have your VESC mounted here. You need a battery cable, of course, so you can plug in the VESC here. Hall cables and phase cables from the motor will come out of this hole. In the production model we have, you know, an extra hole so it doesn't interfere with these on and off button as much. Well, phase cables are always quite easy, I guess. Just, you know, make a connector for the hall cable. This will be a much smaller box in the future, so way easier wiring, but again, we'll do a separate video. And on this battery side, you know, we like to use a fuse, so it's just you know, question of mounting the battery and then putting in the fuse. So I'm not going to show you the wiring process right now. So we have the back one. There's 2 versions of it. Standard, it comes with a straight one. We like using this concave. It gives you a bit more grip, especially on the rough terrain. But the drawback is that, you know, the sensors, the foot sensors need to be really perfect. We have very nice foot sensors, but some people use very thick soles under their shoes, which makes it a bit harder to engage. You can always turn on fuzzy, of course, but you know, if you're a beginner, the flat's nice. If you're a bit lighter, I'm quite heavy, so I never have these engaged problems. But if you're slightly heavier, you know, go for the flat one, see what you like. I heard some people today saying they don't like the new foot pads, the concave foot pads of the GTS, even though most people like them. So I know it comes down to personal preference, I guess. all 6 of these are long. Then the outside ones going into the inner fender are also the long ones. And then on the inside we're using, you know, slightly smaller ones we used earlier on the slide plates, same bolt. It could have been a long one, but we're using these bolts anyway, so it looks a bit better, I guess. It's less screwing in. Less work, more better. Okay, front one. I'm not connecting the foot sensors right now. Normally you should always, you know, remember to connect the foot sensors, get all the wires out of the way. Let's see if I did that. Yeah, I like it. I like doing this in a sort of a star pattern, so I do. Alright, let me get this one in and I'll show you. So I like doing this one, that one, that one, this one, that one, that one, and then these front 4. But I don't know. Just a matter of how I was raised, I guess. Okay, so last but not least, we need a charger plug. We use this really box standard one. I can't remember which one it is, but we'll link in the description which one. It's just a charger plug. You can get really generic charger. Just make sure your voltage matches your battery. Just screw it in, and it uses the only 2 M3 balls in the entire build. Because I don't like these M3s. I think they're too small. They're too fiddly. You can easily break the threads, but you know, for this small component, it doesn't really matter that much. And again, earlier I was discussing these, why we are using these kind of Allen nuts, Allen bolts, and that is because it's protecting these charge plug as well. You can lose this cover, but it can't, you know, go further than that. So when it rolls down a hill, it's usually fine. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It will help us a lot. We will release future videos about, you know, wiring, setting up VESC, stuff like that. And for now, enjoy.
One take, jongen.
Ja toch?
Lekker.